Princess Velora stood tall in the open transport, her silver-blue armor gleaming under the pale twin suns of Tythera Prime. The ruins of the once great city stretched around her, crumbling towers covered in dust, broken roads leading to nowhere. It had been years since the Kryn attacked her homeworld, reducing it to little more than a battlefield. Now, with the war still raging across the stars, she had come to negotiate an important alliance for her people. She did not expect trouble. The convoy consisted of 5 armored vehicles, each carrying elite Sci-Fi warriors, trained, disciplined, and sworn to protect their princess. High above, sleek black escort drones hovered, scanning for threats. Velora felt confident. Her people were powerful. Their technology far surpassed that of many lesser races. And the humans, they were barely worth considering. Weak, primitive, unimportant in the grand scale of the universe. But her confidence was about to be shattered. A sudden explosion ripped through the air. The lead vehicle was torn apart in a ball of fire. The force of the blast sent debris flying, and a shockwave knocked Velora backward. Before she could react, the sky filled with the screeching war cries of the Kryn. Hundreds of them. The insectoid warriors swarmed from the ruins like a living wave, their chitinous bodies reflecting the light, their bladed arms raised high. Plasma bolts rained down on the convoy as the Kryn launched their ambush. The Sci-Fi warriors returned fire, but they were already outnumbered. Velora rolled to her feet, drawing her energy blade. The hum of its blue-white plasma filled the air as she charged forward. She slashed through the nearest Kryn, her blade cutting cleanly through its armored body. But for every one she cut down, 5 more took its place. Defensive formation, one of her captains shouted. Protect the princess. But there was no time. Another explosion sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The transport behind her flipped over, crashing into a broken building. Smoke and fire filled the air. The escort drones were shot down one by one, falling like black meteors into the ruins. Velora gritted her teeth. This was not just an ambush. It was a massacre. Her warriors were falling. She saw her people, proud, Sci-Fi soldiers, being overwhelmed. The Kryn were ruthless, striking with brutal efficiency. Her heart pounded. She had never feared death before. But now, standing amid the carnage, she realized something. She was going to die here. A Kryn warrior lunged at her, its blade-like arms swinging for her neck. She barely dodged in time. Another Kryn came from behind, striking her shoulder. Pain shot through her body, and she stumbled. The world spun around her as she fell to the ground, her blade slipping from her grasp. Her vision blurred. She heard the screeches of the Kryn closing in. This was it. But then, a new sound. Sharp, loud, powerful. Gunfire. Not the plasma weapons of the Typhiri. Not the energy bursts of the Kryn. This was something else. Something raw, brutal, and precise. A Kryn above her jerked backward, its body torn apart by an unseen force. Another fell, then another. Velora blinked in shock as the battlefield shifted. The Kryn attackers were being cut down, one after another, by rapid, deadly projectiles. Then, through the smoke, a figure appeared. A lone soldier, clad in dark, battle-worn armor, stepped onto the battlefield. His helmet gleamed under the harsh light, the visor reflecting the chaos around him. In his hands, he held a rifle unlike anything Velora had seen before, compact, powerful, and spitting fire with each pull of the trigger. He moved with precision, wasting no shots. Every bullet found its mark. Kryn warriors fell in droves, their bodies riddled with lethal wounds. Velora could only stare, a human. She had seen their kind before, diplomats, traders, mercenaries, but never like this. This one was different. He fought like a force of nature, like a being who had walked through hell and emerged stronger. The Kryn hesitated. They had come expecting easy prey. They had not expected him. He advanced fearlessly, dodging incoming fire, taking down enemies with brutal efficiency. In mere moments, the tide of battle had changed. The Kryn, realizing they had lost their advantage, let out sharp cries and retreated into the ruins. The battlefield fell silent. Velora lay on the ground, her armor dented, her body aching. The human approached, his rifle still raised, scanning for threats. Then he looked at her. For the first time in her life, Princess Velora felt truly shocked. This human, this soldier, had saved her. She, a princess of the mighty Sci-Fi dominion, had been rescued by a mere human. And she had no idea what to make of it. Smoke still lingered in the air, mixing with the scent of burning metal and scorched earth. Princess Velora lay on the ground, her breath coming in sharp gasps as she tried to process what had just happened. The battlefield was silent now, except for the faint crackling of fire and the occasional groan of a wounded soldier. And standing in the middle of it all was him, the human. Velora had seen humans before. Merchants, travelers, diplomats. She had always thought of them as weak, short-lived creatures, struggling to survive in a galaxy dominated by stronger races. But the man standing before her did not look weak. His black and gray armor was scratched and battle-worn, his rifle still smoking from the fight. He stood tall, scanning the area with the precision of a seasoned warrior. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the human took a step forward. "Can you move?" His voice was firm, direct. Velora stiffened. She was not used to being spoken to like that. As a princess, she commanded respect. People bowed before her, waited for her orders. But this man, he was treating her like an ordinary soldier. She pushed herself up, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. "I am fine," she said, trying to sound strong. The human's visor tilted slightly, as if he was examining her. Then, without another word, he turned and began searching the battlefield, checking the bodies of her fallen soldiers. Velora watched in disbelief. Who was this man? Before she could ask, he spoke again. "Your convoy is gone." The Kryn wiped them out. He paused, looking toward the ruins where the insectoid warriors had retreated. "They'll be back. You need to move." Velora clenched her jaw. She knew he was right. The Kryn never left survivors. If they returned with reinforcements, she would be dead within minutes. Still, she hesitated. "Who are you?" The human turned to face her. For a brief moment, the sun reflected off his visor, making it impossible to see his face. Then he reached up and removed his helmet. Velora's eyes widened. He was young, perhaps in his early 30s, yet his face was hardened by war. His short brown hair was damp with sweat, his skin smeared with dust and blood. But what struck her the most were his eyes. Cold, calculating, the eyes of someone who had seen too many battles and survived them all. "Sergeant Daniel Carter," he said simply. "Terran Marine Corps, a human soldier. A mere Terran, standing on her homeworld, speaking to her as if they were equals." Velora struggled to hide her frustration. "I did not ask for your help, human." Carter's expression didn't change. "And I didn't ask to be here, princess. But if you want to stay alive, you'll follow me." The sheer arrogance of his words made Velora's blood boil. Yet, as much as she hated to admit it, he was right. She had no weapon, no soldiers, no backup. The only reason she was still breathing was because of him. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "Where do we go?" Carter pointed toward the ruined city. "There's an old Sci-Fi bunker about 2 clicks from here. It should still have supplies. We'll be safe there until I figure out our next move." "We?" Velora raised an eyebrow. "You expect me to take orders from a human?" Carter smirked. "No, I expect you to listen if you want to survive." For a moment, Velora considered arguing, but the sound of distant screeches made the decision for her. The Kryn were regrouping. She let out a slow breath. "Fine. Lead the way." Carter nodded and moved quickly, staying low as he weaved through the rubble. Velora followed, her sharp eyes scanning for danger. Despite everything, she had to admit, this human moved like a warrior. He wasn't just some foot soldier. He was trained, experienced. As they ran through the ruins, Valora felt something unexpected, a sense of unease, not because she was in danger, not because she was being hunted, but because, for the first time in her life, she wasn't the strongest one on the battlefield. And that realization shook her more than anything else. Valora moved swiftly behind Carter, her senses sharp, her body tense. The ruined city stretched around them, broken towers and collapsed streets creating a maze of destruction. Smoke still rose from the wreckage of her convoy in the distance, and the distant screeches of the Kryn reminded her that danger was never far. She had never felt this vulnerable before. A princess of the Sci-Fi dominion, trained in battle, raised to believe in the superiority of her people, yet here she was, following the human soldier like a lost recruit. It made her skin crawl. Carter led the way with practiced ease, his rifle held steady, his head constantly turning as he scanned their surroundings. He moved like a predator, calm, controlled, dangerous. Every step he took had purpose, every decision calculated. Valora hated to admit it, but she was starting to see why the Kryn had fled. The path through the ruins was treacherous. Rubble blocked the roads, forcing them to climb over broken walls and shattered vehicles. Twice, Carter raised a fist and signaled her to stop, waiting in silence as Kryn patrols passed by. His ability to anticipate danger was uncanny. After what felt like hours, they finally reached a large collapsed structure. Once a Sci-Fi command bunker, now it was just another ruin in a war-torn world. Carter moved toward a broken entrance, prying open a rusted hatch with a grunt of effort. "Inside," he said. Valora hesitated. She was not used to taking orders, especially not from a human, but arguing here was foolish. She stepped inside, her boots crunching against the debris-covered floor. The air smelled of dust and metal, and the walls were covered in old battle scars. Carter followed, sealing the hatch behind them. He turned on a small wrist light, scanning the room. "Looks intact," he muttered. "Should be safe for now." Valora crossed her arms. "And what now, human?" Carter ignored her tone and set his rifle against the wall. "First, we check for supplies. Then we figure out how to get you off this planet alive." His confidence irritated her. "You act as if you are in charge." Carter glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "I act like someone who knows how to survive." Valora narrowed her eyes but said nothing. Instead, she moved to the other side of the room, searching through old supply crates. Most were empty, their contents long since stolen or destroyed. But in one, she found a small med kit. She pulled it out, examining the worn label. Carter noticed. "You hurt." "It is nothing," she said quickly. He gave her a look but didn't push the matter. Instead, he grabbed a water canister from another crate, took a sip, then tossed it to her. She caught it with ease, though the gesture surprised her. "You think I need your help?" she asked. Carter smirked. "No, but I think you need water." Valora frowned, but took a drink. The water was stale, but refreshing. She wiped her mouth and looked at him. "Why did you save me?" Carter leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "You were about to be killed. Seemed like a bad way to go. You are a soldier. Your people and mine are not allies." Carter shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Kryn are a bigger problem, and I don't leave people behind." Valora studied him carefully. He spoke with a simplicity that almost made him seem careless, but she knew better. There was thought behind his words, a quiet certainty. She had always believed humans were weak, ruled by emotion rather than logic. Yet this man, he fought like a warrior, and he didn't even seem to care about the fact that he had saved a princess. "Your people," she said slowly. "They fight like this." Carter chuckled. "Some of us. Enough to give the Kryn a real problem." Valora couldn't hide her curiosity. The Sci-Fi had dismissed humans as insignificant, but if Carter was proof of what they were capable of, Then perhaps they had underestimated them. A sudden noise made both of them freeze. A distant screech echoed through the bunker's tunnels. The Kryn were still searching. Carter grabbed his rifle. "Get some rest while you can. We move at first light." Valora hesitated. She was not used to being given orders, but survival mattered more than pride. For now, she sat against the wall, watching Carter as he checked his weapon. For the first time, she wondered, perhaps humans were not as weak as she had always believed. And that thought unsettled her more than anything else. A dim light flickered from Carter's wrist device, casting faint shadows across the bunker's cold walls. The silence between him and Valora was heavy, filled only with the distant screeches of Kryn patrols above. Time was running out. Carter sat cross-legged, his rifle across his lap as he checked his ammo. He had saved the Sci-Fi princess, but survival was still uncertain. The Kryn never left a job unfinished. They would keep searching until they found her. Valora sat opposite him, arms crossed, her silver-blue armor scratched from battle. Her golden eyes watched Carter carefully, as if trying to understand him. "You have a plan," she finally said. It wasn't a question. Carter smirked. "Always." Valora leaned forward. "Then tell me, human, how do we leave this place?" Carter tapped his wrist device, a small holographic map appearing in the air between them. It showed the ruins of Sci-Fi Prime, red markers indicating Kryn movements. He pointed to a large structure near the outskirts. "This is an old Sci-Fi military outpost," he said, "still intact. If we can get there, I can call for an extraction." Valora narrowed her eyes. "And why do you think your people will answer?" Carter chuckled. "Because they owe me a favor." She didn't like that answer. Humans were unpredictable, and she didn't trust them. But she also didn't have a better plan. "The Kryn are everywhere," she said. "They will see us coming." Carter's smirk didn't fade. "Not if we move smart." He pointed at the underground tunnels marked on the map. "We go through here. Old Sci-Fi supply routes. Should still be stable." Valora's eyes widened slightly. "You know about the tunnels. Studied the battlefield before I dropped in." Valora was impressed, but hid it well. A human soldier, planning his mission with such precision. She had never expected this. She took a deep breath. "Then we move now." Carter shook his head. "No, we wait." Valora scowled. "Why? The longer we stay, the more dangerous it becomes." Carter gestured to the entrance. "Kryn expect us to run. Right now, they're watching the roads, setting up ambushes. If we leave too soon, we walk straight into them." Valora frowned but saw the logic. "Then when?" Carter checked his device. 2 hours, just before dawn. "They'll be tired, patrols will thin out. That's our window." She studied him carefully. His calmness was unsettling. He had no fear of the Kryn, no hesitation. He fought like a soldier but thought like a hunter. "You have done this before," she said. Carter gave a small nod. "A few times." Valora hesitated, then asked the question that had been in her mind since the battle. "Why did you come to Sci-Fi Prime?" Carter leaned back. "Wasn't part of the plan. My ship got hit in orbit. I crash-landed." Valora's brows furrowed. "And yet, here you are, saving a Sci-Fi princess." Carter shrugged. "Lucky day." She wasn't sure if he was joking. Before she could ask more, a distant sound caught their attention. A metallic clang, followed by heavy footsteps. The Kryn were near. Carter moved fast, switching off his device. He pressed a finger to his lips. Silence. Valora nodded, gripping her energy blade. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows moved past the cracks in the walls. Kryn voices clicked and chattered in their alien language. Searching. Hunting. Then one of them stopped. Right outside the entrance. Carter gripped his rifle, finger hovering over the trigger. Valora tensed, her breath slow and controlled. Seconds passed like eternity. Then, the Kryn let out a low hiss, then turned and walked away. The tension in the room eased. Carter exhaled. Close one. Valora released the breath she didn't realize she was holding. We need to move. Carter nodded. 2 hours. Then we go. Valora studied him one last time. She still did not trust him fully. But for now, he was her only chance at survival. And she had a feeling this human was not as simple as he seemed. The tunnels beneath the ruined city were dark, damp, and eerily silent. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of rusted metal lingered in every corner. Valora moved cautiously, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows ahead. Behind her, Carter followed, his rifle raised, steps quiet but firm. They had waited for 2 hours, just as Carter had planned. When the Kryn's patrols had thinned, they had slipped into the underground tunnels unnoticed. So far, the plan was working. But Valora knew better than to trust silence. "This place is old," Carter muttered, his voice low. "How stable is it?" Valora touched the rough walls, feeling the worn structure beneath her fingers. "Sci-Fi engineering is strong. It will hold." Carter smirked. "Yeah. I've seen a lot of strong buildings collapse in war zones." Valora shot him a sharp look but said nothing. She had to admit, his caution was not without reason. The tunnels had been abandoned for years. Time had weakened them. They walked for several minutes, guided only by Carter's wrist light and Valora's memory of the old maps. The tunnels were once supply routes, connecting different parts of the city. If they could reach the exit near the old outpost, they might have a chance of escape. But something felt wrong. Valora slowed her steps, her warrior instincts warning her of unseen danger. Carter noticed and stopped as well. "What is it?" She raised a hand for silence. Listened. The tunnels were quiet, too quiet. Then, a noise, a soft, clicking sound. Faint, but unmistakable. "The Kryn," she whispered. Carter's grip on his rifle tightened. "They're down here." Valora nodded. "They must have tracked us." Carter muttered a curse. "How many ways out of this tunnel?" "Just one," Valora said. "But it is far." Carter exhaled sharply. "Then we better move. Fast." They quickened their pace, keeping their footsteps light. But the clicking sounds grew louder. The Kryn were moving through the tunnels as well, searching, hunting. Then, a screech, echoing through the tunnels. Valora's heart pounded. They had been found. "Run," Carter snapped. They sprinted through the tunnels, dodging fallen debris and broken pipes. The Kryn screeches behind them grew louder, their footsteps fast and relentless. Valora risked a glance back. Shadowy figures were chasing them. Fast, insect-like creatures with glowing red eyes. They were closing in. Carter skidded to a stop at a junction. "Which way?" Valora pointed left. "This way." A Kryn warrior lunged from the darkness. Valora reacted instantly, drawing her energy blade and slashing upward. The Kryn shrieked as the glowing blade sliced through its armored limb. It staggered back, but more were coming. Carter fired his rifle. Bright plasma rounds lit up the tunnel, striking the Kryn and sending them screeching into the shadows. "We need to block the path," Valora shouted. Carter scanned the tunnel, then spotted a weakened support beam. "Stand back." He tossed a small explosive toward it and pulled Valora away. Boom! The tunnel shook as debris collapsed, sealing the path behind them. Dust filled the air, and the Kryn's screeches were drowned by falling rubble. Silence. Carter coughed, waving the dust away. "That won't hold them forever." Valora nodded. "But it will give us time." They turned and ran, following the tunnel's path. Minutes passed before they reached a rusted metal door at the end. Valora pressed a panel, but nothing happened. "It's locked." Carter stepped forward. "Let me." He pulled a small tool from his belt and started working on the lock. Sparks flew as he bypassed the security system. "How do humans learn all these things?" Valora asked, watching in surprise. Carter smirked. "Survival." A final spark, and the lock clicked open. Carter pushed the door. It creaked but gave way. Beyond it, open air. Valora stepped out, feeling the cool wind on her face. The ruins of the old outpost were ahead, the stars shining above. Carter took a deep breath. We made it. But Valora knew better. The battle was not over yet. The Kryn would not give up. And soon, they would be coming. The cold night wind swept across the ruins, carrying the distant sounds of battle in the war-torn city. Valora and Carter stepped out of the tunnel and into the open, their eyes scanning the landscape. Ahead of them, the old Sci-Fi military outpost stood like a silent guardian, a crumbling structure, its walls scarred from past wars. But it was their only hope. Carter checked his rifle. We need to move fast. The Kryn won't stop hunting us. Valora nodded. The outpost has an old communications array. If we can power it, we can send a distress signal. Carter gave her a smirk. Then let's hope it still works. They moved quickly across the ruined ground, stepping over broken metal and debris. Every shadow felt like an enemy. Every sound made Valora tighten her grip on her energy blade. The Kryn were coming. She could feel it. Reaching the outpost's entrance, Carter pushed against a rusted door. It groaned but finally gave way, revealing a dark, dust-filled corridor. This place has been abandoned for years, Valora said, stepping inside. Carter looked around. Looks solid enough. He pointed down the hallway. Where's the control room? Valora led the way, her sharp memory guiding them through the old structure. At last, they reached a large room filled with broken consoles and dead screens. Carter moved to one of the panels, wiping dust from the screen. Let's see if we can wake this thing up. Valora found the main power switch and flipped it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a flicker of light. The consoles hummed softly, ancient systems struggling to come back to life. Carter grinned. Not bad, princess. Valora ignored the comment. Send the signal. Now. Carter's fingers moved quickly over the controls. This is Sergeant Carter of the Terran Defense Force, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Need immediate evac. Coordinates locked in. A pause. Static crackled over the speakers. Then, a voice. Signal received, Sergeant Carter. Extraction team en route. Hold your position. Carter exhaled. Help is coming. But Valora's body tensed. Because outside, she heard the Kryn. They had arrived. A chilling screech echoed through the night, followed by the thudding of heavy footsteps. Dozens of red eyes glowed in the darkness beyond the outpost walls. The Kryn had tracked them, and they were ready to strike. Valora turned to Carter. We are outnumbered. Carter locked his rifle. Yeah, but we're not out of fight. The first Kryn leaped through the broken doorway. Valora's energy blade flashed, cutting the creature down before it could land. Carter fired precise shots, plasma rounds hitting targets with deadly accuracy. But more kept coming. The outpost shook as Kryn forces stormed the entrance, their sharp claws tearing through walls. Valora moved with deadly grace, striking down enemy after enemy. Carter held his ground, firing shot after shot, never wasting a single bullet. We can't hold them forever, Valora shouted. Carter reloaded. We don't have to, just long enough. A Kryn warrior lunged at Carter, but he rolled aside, blasting it point blank. Another creature leaped toward Valora. She dodged, spinning her blade in a perfect arc, slicing through its armor. The battle raged on, the outpost becoming a war zone. Then, a bright light in the sky. Carter looked up and grinned. They're here. A Terran dropship roared down from the clouds, its engines shaking the ground. Heavy cannons fired, raining destruction on the Kryn below. The alien creatures screeched in fury as they were torn apart by human firepower. The ship's side hatch opened, and a voice echoed through the comms. Carter, get aboard. Valora hesitated. Her people and humans were not allies. This was not her war. Carter noticed. Princess, we don't have time for pride. Move. Valora clenched her jaw, but she ran. They sprinted toward the dropship as Kryn forces tried to block their path. Carter fired at anything that moved, covering their escape. Valora leaped over rubble, slicing down a Kryn warrior before diving into the ship's open hatch. Carter jumped in right behind her. Go, go, go. The dropship's engines flared, lifting them off the ground. Below, the Kryn screeched in frustration as their prey escaped into the night sky. Valora watched the battlefield shrink beneath them. She had survived. But something had changed. She turned to Carter, breathing heavily. Why did you fight so hard to save me? Carter smirked, leaning back against the ship's wall. Because I don't leave people behind. Valora stared at him for a long moment. For the first time, she wondered, perhaps humans were not just survivors. Perhaps they were something more. And that thought would stay with her forever. The Terran dropship soared through the dark skies, its engines humming steadily. Below, the ruins of Sci-Fi Prime stretched endlessly, the battlefield now nothing but distant lights and smoke. The Kryn had lost their prey. Inside the ship, Carter sat against the cold metal wall, his rifle resting across his lap. His body ached from the battle, but his mind was still sharp, alert. Years of war had taught him that survival was never guaranteed until you were far away from the fight. Across from him, Princess Valora sat silently, staring out of the small window. Her golden eyes reflected the distant stars. She had survived. But her world, her people, everything had changed. The silence between them stretched until Valora finally spoke. Where are you taking me? Carter leaned his head back, sighing. Terran command. You'll be safe there until we figure out the next move. Valora frowned. And what happens then? Carter shrugged. That's up to you. Valora studied him. This human, this soldier, had risked everything to save her. He had no reason to. Humans and Sci-Fi were not allies. They had barely interacted before this war, and yet he had fought beside her as if they were kin. She needed answers. Why did you do it? She asked. Why save me? Carter opened one eye and smirked. I already told you. I don't leave people behind. Valora's expression hardened. That is not an answer. Carter sighed, sitting up straight. Look, Princess, this war, it's bigger than just humans or Sci-Fi. The Kryn don't care about who they conquer. They take everything. If they destroy your world today, they'll come for mine tomorrow. Valora's fingers tightened around her blade hilt. She knew he was right. The Kryn did not negotiate. They only consumed. Carter continued, his voice calm but firm. I saved you because it was the right thing to do. Because if there's even a chance that humans and Sci-Fi can fight together, we might actually win this war. Valora looked away, deep in thought. She had been raised to believe that humans were reckless, unpredictable. Yet this soldier had shown nothing but loyalty, strategy, and strength. He had fought as fiercely as any Sci-Fi warrior. Perhaps she had been wrong about them. Suddenly, the ship's comms crackled to life. Sergeant Carter, we have a problem. Carter grabbed his wrist device. Talk to me. The pilot's voice was tense. Kryn warships detected. They've launched interceptors. They know we have the princess. Valora's heart clenched. The Kryn were relentless. Carter stood up, gripping the overhead rail. How long till they reach us? 2 minutes. They're fast. Carter cursed under his breath. Do we have weapons? Negative. This is a transport ship, not a fighter. We won't survive a direct attack. Valora clenched her fists. Then we need to outmaneuver them. Carter smirked. I like the way you think. He turned back to the comms. Take us through the asteroid belt ahead. Use it for cover. The pilot hesitated. That's a dangerous route. Carter glanced at Valora, then back at the comms. So are Kryn warships. Do it. The ship tilted sharply, engines roaring as it veered toward the nearby asteroid field. Outside, The Kryn interceptors appeared, sleek, insect-like ships with glowing red engines, closing in fast. Velora gripped the seat beside her. Hold on. The ship dove between massive asteroids, twisting and turning to avoid collisions. The Kryn ships followed, their weapons firing bright streaks of energy, barely missing the hull. Carter watched the enemy ships on the screen. They're faster, but we're smarter. The ship dodged another asteroid, spinning sideways before shooting through a narrow gap. One of the Kryn interceptors followed, too close. Carter saw the opening. Pilot, cut the engines for 3 seconds. Now. The pilot obeyed. The ship suddenly slowed. The Kryn interceptor, unable to react in time, smashed into an asteroid, exploding in a fiery blast. Carter grinned. That's one down. Velora's eyes sparkled with admiration. This human was not just a soldier. He was a tactician. The ship dodged and weaved, avoiding enemy fire. But the last Kryn interceptor was still gaining. Velora stood. Let me help. Carter raised a brow. You know how to fly. Velora moved to the control panel. No, but I know how to disrupt Kryn sensors. She pressed a sequence of buttons on the console. A pulse of energy burst from the ship, scrambling the enemy's tracking systems. The Kryn ship hesitated for a second, just enough time. The pilot jerked the ship upward, leaving the enemy craft disoriented. It tried to correct its path, but crashed into another asteroid. The Kryn threat was gone. The ship cleared the asteroid belt, heading toward safety. Carter exhaled. Not bad, Princess. Velora smirked. Not bad yourself, human. For the first time since the battle, Carter saw something different in her golden eyes. Respect. As the ship approached Terran Command, Velora sat down beside him. Perhaps there is hope for an alliance after all. Carter grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. She extended a hand. Velora, daughter of the Scifi High Council. Carter shook it firmly. Carter, Terran Defense Force. The war was far from over. But in that moment, something new was born. Trust between two warriors. And maybe, just maybe, that trust would change the fate of the galaxy.